everyone's pretty much in agreement that you can't really criticize the forward group, right? You got guys like me saying, I wish Tom Wilson was there. Who cares? Who ultimately cares? Even the blue line, where there's been some nitpicking from myself included, and especially the chart boys who are all over Colton Parayko. Ultimately, the blue line is deep and solid and looks just as good as any other country, and I still think is going to be better than Team USA's, which people are pointing to on paper and going like, look, yeah, a lot of those guys, good point getters, good puck movers. We'll see. We'll see. We will see. We will see. The goaltending, you just look across the board, and that's the one area where Canada is clearly behind every other country. And can Jordan Binnington get hot? Yeah, we've seen it before. Is Aiden Hill, as our friend Kevin Woodley said, the type of goaltender that could end up fitting the mold for Team Canada? Absolutely, he could be. Really, what we're doing here is a dry run for the Olympics. And there's not going to be time to turn this sucker around. There's no player that's sitting out with an injury here. There's no one that you're looking at and saying, well, this guy's 1 year away from being on the... Like, that ain't the thing. So what you're going to see in this tournament is what you're going to get when, I'll say it, it's going to be more meaningful in the Olympics, when all the nations are there, when it does feel like the true blue return to international hockey. And so... it's going to be a big point of conversation. A lot of people are going to kind of mull over it and decide whether or not Canada's even going to be able to stand a chance in this tournament, given the discrepancy in that. But ultimately, that will be the major thing is, hey, can these guys look passable enough? Does the roster look dominant in a way? Can they outscore maybe some of these problems? And can they answer for the difference with the most important position with the only player that stays on the ice for the entirety of the game? Anyways, James Myrtle, senior writer at The Athletic, joins me now. What's up, buddy? How we doing?
I'm good. So good little rant there.
Thank you. That's what I do for a living. I do these little rants. I do these little talkies off the top of shows. I go, here's a little thought I had, and then we go. Then we start. So, yeah, let's just start with this. Very, very broad strokes. What do you think of the roster?
I think it's about what we expected, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
There's like Travis Sanheim is a surprise.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I like you said, there's not a whole lot I can quibble with there around the edges, and I think they made some smart decisions thinking ahead a little bit to the Olympics, as opposed to naming some of the elder statesmen. Like they could have named, I mean, I don't know how close he is, but like Drew Doughty or John Tavares or Stamkos or these guys, and made some legacy picks as they've done in the past. But I think they're looking ahead, and that makes lots of sense. And the goaltending is going to be the biggest thing. And this has been brewing for a long time in Canada. I remember I did a big project for the Globe and Mail 11 years ago, and it was looking at what's wrong with goaltending in Canada, and it's in such a much worse place now than it was 11 years ago. And I don't know that there's any hope in sight. The Americans are the country that's really come on in goal. They were never really a goalie producing nation. You go back 15, 20 years ago, it was like Mike Richter and Beesbrook, and they didn't have the depth there. And now it's unbelievable. You look at the guys that the Americans haven't brought, and they're so good. It's incredible.
Yeah, no, they're much, much, much deeper in that. Russia, not there, much, much, much deeper in that. You go across the board, every country has unquestionably far better top-tier talent. And yeah, again, Canada is at the point where, I talked to Kevin Woodley about this a couple of weeks ago, where they're sending people down to the States to evaluate the ways that they're developing goaltenders. We're at the point where they're trying to pull Joel Embiid moves and grab Joey Decord to try and be Team Canada's goaltender and funnel him a passport so that they can have somebody who I wouldn't even view as like an all-star in the league to have him in net. That's how things are shaping up for Canada. So I don't think that this is going to be an immediately fixable problem, right? Like I just mentioned, it's not going to change going into this Olympic cycle. What I do have hope for, I guess, is if it does cost Team Canada, and we've always made the jokes about goalie summit, right? This has been around for quite some time, but that they start to really address some of the costs, especially for minor league players. I just remember what it took for me to be a goalie as a kid. And that was, God, a million years ago at this point. And the idea of how hard it is to shop around for secondhand equipment, how, the gear for you at a rink is pretty much unavailable once you pass, I think, Adams, or at least it was for me. I don't know how much better that's gotten. Maybe I can ask around.
It's different in different regions and stuff.
Sure.
Is the way that it works. Yeah.
Sure, but even still, when you're a kid, you end up wanting to have your own gear. You want to show up to the arena and have your stuff and not use the equipment that is provided to you. But there's got to be some way of figuring this out so that parents of goaltenders are not bearing the immense burden of this cost. That these camps are less expensive. That like the development is better. Because what is very, very clear here is we're doing something wrong, and I do think that there's a lot of problems with the sport in general when it comes to costs. I don't think that it's cheap for any parent. I think that the sport is intimidating financially for a lot of people, especially given that the better your kid gets, the more expensive it just automatically becomes, right? It's like, hey, here's your reward. We think your kid is really good. Fork over tens of thousands of dollars for them to develop in this country. Like something is broken here. But with goaltenders especially, God, I really do hope that the conversations that come out of this tournament, if Canada does fail, is that, hey, you know what? We still care about this sport. This is something that still unifies us as a people. It's something that even if you didn't grow up with hockey, is very inclusive in terms of bringing you into the fold as a Canadian. And I it's important. It's important to the national identity. And I think we do have to figure out different ways of approach if it's going to maintain to be the national game of Canada.
Yeah. And, you look at the European approach is really like the kind of local club system. And there is, costs offset in terms of the equipment. There's more communal equipment. And also my understanding in Sweden and Finland is that the cost of the goalie equipment is borne by the whole team. It's spread among everybody because you have to have goalies to have a team, right? So it doesn't make sense to put all that burden on one family or one kid. And the other thing that they do in the club system is they kind of have like goalie skill development days so they have a practice that's just for goalies because, as you know really well, essentially the goalies are playing a completely different sport. Like they're not really playing hockey. I mean, they are, but they're doing something completely different. Like it has nothing really other than wearing skates and having a stick. And it doesn't have anything to do with what anyone else is doing.
They're different skates.
Yeah. And the thing that always has blown my mind being around NHL teams is that even at the NHL level, the head coaches usually, unless they're a former goalie, usually don't know anything about goaltending. And they say that. They're like, yeah, he stopped the pucks. And one of the things you hear a lot talking to goalie experts in Canada is that there hasn't been, the goalies have been an afterthought. Too often the coaches and the people around the game haven't known anything about goaltending. And the kids just, the coach just says, yeah, go in there and like stop the puck. And his practice is just, has to be found somewhere else. So that's another thing and I know that Hockey Canada has talked about this because I talked to them about it, more than a decade ago, but it just, whatever they've been doing hasn't been working.
Listen, I'm not a special case here, but I can tell you that as we're having this conversation, I'm thinking about some of the quote unquote coaching I got to play the position as a kid. And it was not exactly overly instructive until you went to goalie schools, right? Until you went to goalie camps. And then you actually got training. Then you actually got real coaching. But again, that's a completely separate thing from the thing that you're doing. And also, again, the sport that you're paying for, where all these other kids are getting coached up, where all these other kids are getting that kind of, meaningful insight into the game and those repetitions, you as a kid in the net are sort of left on your own. You are there on an island. And I can tell you, it's an appealing position for some, but also, eventually you start to look back on it and go, hey, was this the right decision? And I don't know. It just, it's not the easiest thing to do. So, yeah, we got to figure out a way to make this thing better, to make the training better, and to make it, more inclusive for kids. Because this sport just cannot be what it has become, which is simply for the rich. And it's like the understated thing around hockey, and sometimes people bring it up, but it's very true. It's just like the more money you have, the more likely it is that your kid is going to be a good hockey player. And we've got to figure out a way to balance that equation because it's especially happening now in net. Anyways, let's move on. Any other thoughts on this roster? Like any other major talking points that you want to address with this team?
I got to be honest, I'm drawing a blank. I mean, there's a couple defensemen that I think I would have picked over some of the guys they did. Like, sure. I really like Mackenzie Weegar in Calgary, but it's splitting hairs. Like, honestly, I think the other thing that they're going to have to think about, like, they're bringing Stone, they're bringing Pietrangelo. Like, there's some of the guys are long in the tooth, and that's something that they're going to have to worry about. I like the Americans roster better overall, and I don't think it's just in goal. The U.S. This is the best U.S. team by far that we've ever seen. So, and this is really going to be the rivalry in international competition now. Is going to be Canada-U.S. Like it's not the Russia-Canada thing is for multiple reasons is basically dead.
Yeah,
and the Americans are
really back.
It's back in a big way, yeah. And I know there's not a lot of juice in this tournament, and people are looking at it as like an exhibit. But I think for those Canada-U.S. games, it's going to be like it is on the women's side. Like it's going to be appointment viewing, no matter what, every time these teams play, building up to the Olympics next year.
Yeah.
The Toronto Maple Leafs may be taking a new approach to salary management, which could directly impact Mitch Marner's contract negotiations. During Kyle Dubas' tenure as general manager, the team didn't hesitate to spend heavily, and this trend began with a 6-year extension signed by Marner in 2019. At the time, Marner's $10.9 million annual cap hit set the market for superstar wingers, surpassing comparable players like Mikko Rantanen of the Colorado Avalanche, who signed a 6-year deal with a $9.25 million annual cap hit. Now, however, times seem to be changing. TSN's Pierre LeBrun recently reported that the Maple Leafs have implemented an internal salary cap, aiming to ensure no player earns more than captain Austin Matthews, who signed a 4-year extension worth $13.25 million per season in August 2023. The team's primary concern revolves around Marner's agent, Darren Ferris, who, according to LeBrun, might push for a percentage of the total salary cap instead of a fixed dollar amount. This could result in Marner's cap hit exceeding Matthews' $13.25 million, conflicting with the Leafs' new financial strategy. Ferris is known for driving negotiations to the limit, often taking his clients to free agency. This raises fears that discussions between Marner and the Leafs could drag on until July 1st, giving Marner and his camp all the leverage in negotiations. Another complicating factor is the rising market. LeBrun noted that Mikko Rantanen believes he could secure $14 million per season as a free agent. This sparks the question, could Marner demand even more? And would Ferris take that gamble, knowing the Leafs might opt to move on and sign another player? Marner has made it clear on multiple occasions that Toronto is where he wants to be. As a local player with deep ties to the city, he's expressed his desire to spend his entire career wearing the blue and white of the Leafs. However, staying with the team may require him to accept less than market value, especially if the front office remains committed to its new salary structure. Such a sacrifice could be vital for the team's collective success and to avoid financial issues that have plagued the recent past. While negotiations are still in the early stages, it's evident that Marner's future with the Leafs is at stake. Maple Leafs fans may need to prepare for the possibility of significant changes, but they can also trust in the player's commitment to the city and the franchise to find a compromise. The Maple Leafs' decision to implement an internal salary cap reflects a broader shift in their team-building philosophy. After years of prioritizing top-end talent with hefty contracts, the organization appears determined to strike a balance between superstar contracts and depth throughout the roster. This strategy aims to avoid the pitfalls of past seasons, where a lack of financial flexibility often left the team vulnerable in critical playoff moments. For Mitch Marner, this shift creates a unique challenge. On one hand, his value to the Leafs is undeniable. A consistent top scorer and elite playmaker, Marner has been instrumental in driving the team's offense. On the other hand, his ability to command a salary that rivals or exceeds Austin Matthews could put the Leafs in a difficult position, especially with a potential need to strengthen other areas of the roster. As the 2023-24 season progresses, the Leafs must weigh the potential consequences of sticking to their cap philosophy. Losing a homegrown talent like Marner would undoubtedly sting for fans and the organization alike. However, allowing one player to dictate financial terms beyond the team's structure could hinder long-term success and force painful sacrifices elsewhere. Adding to the complexity is the looming free agency of William Nylander. If the Leafs are to stick to their internal salary cap, they may also face challenges in retaining Nylander, who could command a significant raise. Balancing contracts for both Marner and Nylander within the new framework could prove to be the ultimate test for Toronto's management team. Another factor at play is the team's ultimate goal, winning the Stanley Cup. While star players like Marner and Matthews are crucial, history has shown that depth and balanced rosters often prevail in the postseason. If the Leafs fail to manage their finances effectively, they risk falling short of building a championship-caliber team, even with elite talent. For Marner, the decision to stay with the Leafs might come down to more than just dollars. His connection to the city, the fans, and his teammates could be deciding factors. If he prioritizes legacy and loyalty over maximizing earnings, there's a strong possibility that he'll work with the team to find a deal that benefits both parties. Negotiations will also test Darren Ferris, known for his hardline tactics in securing lucrative deals for his clients. While pushing for top dollar is expected, Ferris may need to weigh the risks of alienating the Leafs management and fanbase. A prolonged stalemate could damage Marner's relationship with the team and its supporters. The Leafs management, led by general manager Brad Treliving, faces a pivotal moment. Treliving's reputation as a negotiator and team builder will be on full display as he navigates this high-stakes scenario. Striking the right balance could solidify his tenure in Toronto, while a misstep might set the team back for years. For Maple Leafs fans, the coming months will be filled with anticipation and uncertainty. Marner's future, along with the team's ability to stay competitive under financial constraints, will likely dominate conversations as the season unfolds. Supporters can only hope that the team's new approach leads to greater playoff success and, ultimately, the elusive championship. In the end, the outcome of these negotiations could redefine the Maple Leafs' identity for years to come. Whether it results in retaining Marner or reshaping the roster, the team's commitment to an internal salary cap signals a clear focus on long-term sustainability. Fans will be watching closely, hoping for a resolution that keeps the team's core intact and their championship dreams alive. As the negotiations with Mitch Marner